Welcome to the Joy of Connecting, where modern professionals share stories of meaningful connection and how it can increase business success, unlock career growth, and create personal happiness. If you like what you hear today, get even more by following the Joy of Connecting on LinkedIn and subscribing to our newsletter that features tips from experts on how to network and connect with more meaning. Well, folks, I have a cup of tea in my hands and it is early, but connection never stops. And I am here with someone who brings me great joy to introduce to you. Great joy whenever I get to chat with her. It is Laurel Farrer. She is the founder of Distribute Consulting and a well-respected expert in the field of remote work, which, as we all know, requires an important and thoughtful understanding of connection. So welcome today, Laurel. It's good to see you. Tell me, to get started, what do you do for a living and who are you passionate about helping?
That's a great question. Well, the easy answer is that I'm a remote work consultant, right? And what that means is that I help organizations of all sizes adopt more flexibility in their operational infrastructures. So,
Right.
companies that want to offer more remote work to their workforces, I help them do that. On the personal side, who I am passionate about helping is minorities. I've always felt
Mhm.
very fueled in my career because remote work helps diversify the talent pool all over the world. We can
Mhm.
reach rural workers, we can reach minorities, we can, accommodate caretakers, accommodate neurodiversity. That is really, I really love seeing that diversity in business. And I feel like remote work is a great strategy to be able to do that.
And you've been thinking and working and living remote work way before it was cool, just to be
Yeah.
very clear for everyone listening. Tell us a little bit, just briefly, because I think it's very interesting, maybe how you think this idea of remote work, and this may be a loaded question, has kind of shifted since when you started doing it through the pandemic. That's a huge question, I know, but I think
Mhm.
contextually it's really important because our idea of how we connect to others in the business world has changed along with it.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been a disheartening adjustment, to be honest. So I have been advocating and building remote work since 2006. So, I mean, we're 18 years into this. And it was a long journey of learning how to do it, finding the patterns, building the companies. And then it evolved into thought leadership. So there was a very small community of people prior to the pandemic that were really championing this
Mhm.
as a cause because of the things that I mentioned, because we saw it as such a great strategy for environmental sustainability and workforce diversity and just mobility and just technology, leveraging technology in a new way. It was just such an exciting phase of innovation that was fueled by very personal beliefs.
Mhm.
And then the pandemic happened, and since then, I mean, initially, we were just honored to be a part of it and to be able to help the world and during such a stressful time maintain business continuity and economic stability. But now, as we know, it's the return to office fight. And I think those of us that have been in the space longer, yourself included, are feeling a bit discouraged that we're really missing the forest for the trees. If we're
Yeah.
having this fight about people being in a certain place at a certain time in a certain building, we're really just missing all of this world changing progress that we could be making.
Ugh, cuts to the heart of me because for anyone listening, the connection that brought Laurel here today was that she and I connected over remote work. So I
Mhm.
was working remotely at a large tech company that was, for the most part, quite unfriendly to remote work. And we were connecting over, the challenges, but also over the hope that we could really shift some of these larger ships, turn the course of the big, tankers that were headed places. Well, I know you're a big connector. I know that whenever we chat, you always have at least two other people to connect me with. Tell me a story that you have about a specific connection that you made that maybe impacted the business or, career growth or personal happiness for you or someone else.
Yeah. So I think for me, networking has been a journey. Networking
Mhm.
is not easy or instinctual for me. I am an introvert. I have social anxiety. I hate social media. Like there are many cards stacked against me in which it's like I could very easily at any moment be like, I'm out, I'm done, I'm just locking myself in my little work from home office for the rest of my life. But it was something that I knew that I needed to for
Mhm.
professional value. And so I chipped away at it for years and years and years as an entrepreneur and a freelancer and a consultant. I knew that that was going to be critical to my business. And so I did. And after years of that, that's where still 90% of my business comes from my network. And I think the one that I really was like, this is why I network is when I got Microsoft as a client. That had been years in the making. I had met somebody from Microsoft that was championing remote work, just built a relationship with her, and then eventually she passed off to somebody else and said, "Hey, there's a new person that's like the head of flexibility at Microsoft. You would find her interesting." And so I nurtured that relationship for years. I mean, we're literally like 4 or 5 years in at this point, and then finally that friend called and was like, "Hey, I might need you for a consulting engagement." And it was just one of those, it wasn't necessarily the largest value consulting client I ever had, but professional value it is. Like, every
Mhm.
single time I'm trying to pitch a client, I can now say, "Well, I worked with Microsoft," and that adds a lot of credibility to me as an independent. So, yeah, that was the one that I was like, "Oh, years of patience and work, it finally paid off."
Well, I'm gonna take that as your first piece of advice. I'm always gonna ask for a piece of advice for anyone else who's earlier in their career. It might be just hang on. But what is one piece of advice you might offer someone who is trying to build that network and maybe struggling with some of the same challenges that you have?
You know, the advice that I often give people is to share a personality, not a pitch. Because when somebody comes to me and they're like, "My name's Dave and here's my website," I'm like, ugh, like
Yeah.
nobody likes that. Nobody ever wants, the person in the mall approaching you, spraying you with perfume. Like, nobody wants that. So why are we doing that virtually? It does not make any sense. And I think because this is how I came to peace with networking in the first place, is I was like, that I hate that, but how can I still meet people and build connections in a way that's authentic? And I think that that's it, is to just
Mhm.
be authentic, share who I am, share real conversations, build trust. And out of those relationships will come professional value, but you have to build that personal value first. So be yourself,
Mm.
have authentic, genuine conversations, go into conversations without expecting anything to come out of them in the short term, and just give
Mhm.
generously of yourself, of who you really are. And people will be a lot more attracted to that than they would be, some exchange of monetary value in the beginning.
The perfume in the mall is an amazing example. Okay, one follow-up question to that, because you mentioned this, just sharing authentically and being yourself and building those connections, you do have to enjoy it, right? Like that you can't overly force it. What gets you as an introvert on that call? What is the thing that makes you say, "Okay, Laurel, share authentically. Here we go." I guess it's the why behind it, but
Yeah.
tell us your why, I suppose.
So the why is going to be different every time, but I think it's important that I do establish the why every time. So sometimes it's going to be, I want to meet with this person because I do need to share a pitch with them. Like, I want to offer my consulting services with them.
Even if it's 4 or 5 years down the road. Yes.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
so that is my why, and how can I craft the conversation around that? My personal default is a compliment. So it's going in with a purpose. And anytime that I need to break the ice, I just share a compliment. So I loved that presentation that you gave, or I love your wall color, or, whatever, like, just anything. Find something positive and move the conversation forward with that, because there's nobody that doesn't like talking about themselves.
I think that's an absolute perfect one. That kind of one of the questions I always ask is what's one question that you ask that opens up discussion? So yours in this case might just be a compliment, which is
It's
a
a
wonderful
compliment.
trick.
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. A compliment never fails, period. I think it's, How to Win Friends and Influence People, right? Like, it's such an old school book, but every single person in business has to read that. Not even in business, every single person over the age of 16 needs to read that book. Like, we are losing those emotional intelligence skills at an alarming rate, and we really just need to remember how to just have an authentic conversation. So, yeah, for me, what makes me feel comfortable and something that's easy and not scary for me to do is bring a little bit of joy to somebody's life. And that means I just pay them a quick compliment.
I think that's so perfect. Now, tell us, I always want to know what's a community that you know of or you're part of that you feel like really crafts connection well? Because a lot of these relationships you build, when we think about building a network, it often comes through communities or groups or, kind of
Mhm.
things that we're a part of that actually start those conversations from a certain spot. For you, where's a place where connections have been built really well that you'd like to kind of give a shout out to?
Eh, I'll come back to my origin story, which is this group of advocates that were working to champion remote work prior to the pandemic.
Mhm.
There was not a lot of us. If we're talking like 50 around the world in total. And because we worked together and we gave to each other so generously, we bonded a lot. Like
Mm.
some of them I still have never met in person and we know each other's kids' names. We'll say happy birthday. We'll, check in on each other and hey, I know you were feeling burned out a few weeks ago. How are you feeling? Like we really bonded together. And I think that's from the root of that generosity of just sharing ideas without being competitive or gatekeeping and also working together towards a shared vision. And we still stay in touch. And I mean, in back channels, this is not just like, oh, stay in touch on LinkedIn. Like we have private WhatsApp channels that we all stay in touch with each other and celebrate personal events, but then also check in with each other one to one. Like it's a really beautiful friendship that we've built.
Yeah. I love the idea of being built on generosity and a shared goal. I
Mhm.
suppose we want to also say potentially on a shared trauma of the pandemic, but you're
Yeah,
right.
that's
That
true.
as well.
Yeah, well, that's true, and I think that comes with that authenticity as well because none of us were saying well, I think we did for a while of, like, we're all doing okay, and this is the moment we waited for, and we kind of, like,
True.
had that mask on with each other, and we felt more distance from each other. When we took the masks off and we were like, "This is hard for me. Is this hard for you?" "Yes, I'm burning out." And, we're all, like, starfishing on the floor, and we're crying with each other, like, that's when we really bonded together.
Ugh.
So, it was that again, that authenticity of, like, yeah, we can be transparent and vulnerable with each other,
Mhm.
and we can share wins together, but we can also share losses together.
Powerful. So, who is an individual or a person who comes to mind when you think of someone who can build connections, maybe for themselves, maybe for others? Who is someone that you think is a real connection pro?
Ugh, it's my dad, and I say that with a scoff because it's so irritating how good he is at networking. Like, it drives me crazy. Like, true story, we were on vacation as a family. We're in a different country than with the one we live in,
Yeah.
and we're in, I don't know, McDonald's or some fast food place, and my dad, like, across the restaurant's like, "Dugan, how are you?" And he like, "I gotta go say hi to him." And it's just like so it was like this eye rolling moment as a teenager, right? Like, can we literally never escape dad's network, right?
Absolutely.
But now that is what put the pressure on me as a professional. It's like I saw
Yeah.
firsthand how much that influenced his professional success and
Yeah.
brought so much value to him both personally and professionally. I know that I need that. I can't just hide in my hole like I would instinctually like to do. I really need to invest in myself like this by meeting new people. So yeah, my dad, he's so good at names too. That's the one. Like I can meet people. I built a great network. I'm really bad at remembering names. That's the one that I really want to keep working on is remembering everybody's name that I meet.
He has like his own personal CRM in his
Yeah,
head.
all the time. Like it's just there and he remembers everybody. Oh man, I don't know how he does it, but it's amazing.
Oh, that may be my favorite one shared so far. I love that dad is the inspiration. I have to ask, what was his profession? Like, what did he actually spend that, amazing talent on
Yeah.
professionally?
Yeah, he was an economic developer. So, he was all about recruiting businesses to move into our city, and he was always out
Mm.
there, working and meeting new people and trying to incentivize them to move to a not really appealing small town. And then he also worked in the water industry, kind of building on that and, again, like incentivizing projects to get funding so that
Mm.
rural communities could have water. So, yeah, it was not like the most glamorous career, but he worked it.
Yeah, well, interesting too. It's kind of like what you did in that it's a shared goal. Like there was a
Yes.
shared vision or outcome. Well, I've already kept you long, and I will be calling you again because, folks, Laurel is a priceless resource as a human for me, but she is also just a font of incredible knowledge that I'm so glad you were able to share with us today.
Thank you for the invitation. This has been delightful as always.
Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed the episode, please leave a review to help us reach more listeners. Have a story of your own to share or know someone who should be on the show? Visit www.joyofconnect.ing and let us know. Now go send a short message to someone you've been meaning to connect with. You never know where it might lead.